Hello, welcome to the first edition of Todd Talk. I'm Todd Matthy, the writer and creator of Robots vs. Princesses for Dynamite Comics. Opinion's my own. And this is my look inside my mind, and me talking about things that I enjoy, like comics, hard rock, and heavy metal music. Before we get started on tonight's episode, we are going to be tackling the very controversial episode of Game of Thrones that aired this past Sunday called The Bells. But before we get started, I thought I'd take a little shameless plug to tell you all about my comic book, Robots vs. Princesses, now available from Dynamite Comics. You can pick it up on Comixology in your local comic store, or you can go to or you can pre-order it as a graphic novel on Amazon or at your local comic shop. I think comic shop's actually going to be getting it early, so if you want it early, get it now. Links will be in the bottom of, in the information section of this video. Anyway, since we are going to be discussing this major episode, I want to let you know that there will be spoilers, and I'm going to be talking about them. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, you have, please feel free to get out. If you're still, so, here's your chance. I think this song's very appropriate for what we're about to talk about. By the way, there is a great video mashup of this song with scenes from the episode. It's amazing. I love it. It should be the new music video for this song. For those of you who don't know, this is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. If you didn't know that, I'm gonna pretend that you didn't know that. Alright. Game of Thrones, let's get started. Alright. I'm going to start this off with my thoughts overall, then talk about the major points of the episode, and then give what I think were the flaws, but overall, how I felt. Alright, overall thoughts. You know, I've been waiting ever since the beheading of Ned Stark at the end of Season 1. And the birth of those dragons on Dany's shoulder. We have been waiting for the invasion of King's Landing. And it lived up to what I thought it was going to be. I loved the shots, I loved the direction, how we were really like on the ground watching this beast just come down and burn everything in sight. I loved it. And also, it's more or less how I thought things were going to go down in this show. I see this being where George R.R. Martin is actually going to take the characters in the books, which I have read, all 5, but I've only read them once, so if I get some names mixed up, and you're all hardcore Game of Thrones fans out there, forgive me. There's a lot in there, and it's a lot to remember. But it is, it really is, it makes sense given how the show is, given the events that have happened in the show, and really with the character, which I'm going to get into later. A lot of people are upset. I can see why. But then again, this is Game of Thrones. It's not Disney. You know not everybody's going to get out alive. You know that decisions are going to be made in it that, you know, in the words of Ramsay Bolton, if you thought there was going to be a happy ending, you are sorely mistaken. Because it's Game of Thrones, not Disney. Westeros is not like Disney World. It's not a world filled with
sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Everything that's wonderful is what I feel when we're together. Brighter than a lucky penny when you're near. The rain goes, disappears, dear, and...
Alright, I had to get that in, a little Simpsons reference. But yeah, it's not a world filled with sunshines and lollipops. There is no lollipop guild. This is a world where the noble knight is boinking his twin sister, who's the queen, who's also the Wicked Queen. So, yeah, this is not gonna be, it wasn't gonna turn out pretty, and those dragons, they had to be used, and George Martin said that the dragons are the equivalent of nuclear bombs, and he wasn't kidding. Alright, so let's talk about the big one. Dany's heel turn. Ever since Dany, got the first dragons on her shoulder, speaking of dragons, I'm going to introduce my dragon pal. Oh, he's not really a dragon. This is Sharko Sharkticon. What? Gone. Hello! Hey, Sharko, how's it going? What do you like most? Fingers! Bring me a finger, for I am hungry. No, we're not going to do that. So, anyway, as we move on, ever since Dany gave birth to her dragons after burning Miraz, the name escapes, her last name escapes me, she's actually been pretty ruthless when you think about it. She has, let's look at what she's done over the course of the series. She was indifferent to her brother getting the golden crown from Khal Drogo. I think her words were, "A dragon does not burn." Very indifferent. That was her first sign. First clue. But the other things that she did, like when she burned Miraz and told her that she wanted to hear her screams, that they would be music to her ears after she deceived her and cast a blood magic spell that killed her child and made Khal Drogo into a vegetable that she had to smother. So Miraz, she said she wanted to hear him scream. There was the crucifixion of the Mirni slaveholders, the slavers of Astapor being burned and killed by the Unsullied, when she burned the Dothraki elders, the burning of the Tarleys after she burned the Lannisters' forces, when she brought the noblemen of Myr into the dragon pit and had one of them burned and eaten. So Dany's always been very ruthless to people that have wronged her. She also put the House of the Undying, made them suffocate in a vault. So it's not, she's always been, she has noble causes, but cross her and it's gonna be brutal. That being said, a lot of these people, you could argue deserved it, but the point is, Dany's never really been in a one for showing mercy to her enemies. She did try to be nice in Meereen, but, she had to deal with the insurrection of the Sons of the Harpy, who wound up killing Ser Barristan. To show them favor, she even chained up her dragons, because she made a mistake of crucifying a man that apparently was against the slave trade, but was a nobleman that had slave. But, so she chained up her dragons as a compromise to let her know that she was like a gentle ruler. But that didn't stop, and that didn't stop slavers from organizing rebellions against her in Myr. And she knew, so that probably went into her into her decision of burning King's Landing, because she knew and she saw the way people reacted to Jon Snow, and how they reacted to her in Winterfell, that there was going to be resistance. And in her mind, a lot of innocents were going to die because of that insurrection. And she did not want to go through that again. She felt that, number one, Westeros was her right by birth, and that it was her birthright to take it, and if you were not with her, you were an enemy. That was, and that a ruler needs to crush their enemies. And when you're a conqueror, you need to instill fear so that nobody would dare raise a finger against you. So I think that was in her head when she decided to go on the rampage and burn King's Landing. Yes, she killed a bunch of innocent people. That's of no doubt. But I think she was thinking more or less of the future. In what Tolkien, I think, refers to as a eucatastrophe, where basically you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. There's got to be great evil for a greater good. Now, let's get into that. She also knew that, and this is going into it, I'm going down by my notes, by the way. She also knew that, she had to, in terms of crushing resistance, that there was resistance even in her ranks. Jon Snow is the actual heir to the throne. He's the last remaining Targaryen. And that basically ruins both her and actually her brother's claim to the throne. And now that people found out about it, like Varys, someone in her own ranks was sending out ravens to with the message to other nobles' houses in the kingdom, and that she didn't know how many got out, but that would make a lot of people want to take up arms against her. She doesn't want that, so she just decided to make a show of it and just burn everything, barbecue everything, because then people would be afraid. Because I don't know I don't know about you, but if somebody came and was riding on a dragon and raining down fire upon everything, I wouldn't want to mess with them. Another thing that I think caused her to maybe snap was the fact that was just the Lannisters and the strength of them and the history with her family. First of all, the death of Rhaegal and Missandei made her realize that Cersei was not the type of person that was going to surrender without a fight. And even if she did surrender, Cersei was going to find a way to cause an insurrection. Cersei was going to try to get revenge. And if there's one thing this show has been about, it's that what Cersei wants, Cersei gets. Look at what happened with the Faith Militant. Oh, she gave them power, but then they made her do the Walk of Shame. And then what happened? Wildfire to your set. Boom. Gone. Taken out. One stroke. You do not want the Sand Snakes. What happened with to the Princess of Dorne and her daughter? She watched her daughter. She was put in a cell in chains and was going to watch her daughter deteriorate, and then she was going to be killed. And let's not forget the Septa that was ringing the bell of shame. Cersei's in control, and if you think so, and Cersei was not going to go down without a fight. So that meant that Dany had to let her know, had to not only kill her, but let anybody else that's in the Lannister family know that resistance is futile. Which brings us to the history of the Lannisters and the Targaryens. Let's just say, sorry about that. The Lannisters are partially responsible for the overthrow of her family. It was Tywin Lannister who opened the gate. He was the hand of the king to her father. And it was Tywin Lannister who opened the gates that allowed Robert Baratheon's forces to come in and sack King's Landing, and which led to the overthrow. Oh, it was Jaime Lannister, her father's own bodyguard, that killed him right in front of the Iron Throne. And then Tywin Lannister brought her brother's children and his wife and murdered them. Not Tywin Lannister, the Mountain, but the Mountain brought them with Tywin Lannister and laid it at the feet of Robert Baratheon to prove his loyalty. So, the Lannisters, next to King Robert, they're on her shit list, for lack of a better term. So I think that was what she was thinking when she was going in there, that the Lannisters, the people who betrayed her family, were now occupying the Red Keep and had taken control of the city, and suddenly everybody became a Lannister. This also ties in to maybe her childhood. She was constantly on the run. She was constantly being hunted by Robert's forces, and now she got the power to make, and she knew she was going to be hunted even when she took the throne, because there were people that were not going to accept her rule after, again, what happened in Myr. And she just said, enough with it, I'm ending it now. And she ended it in a spectacle in the most brutal way possible. And if you have a dragon, why not? But those are the reasons that, and she also, I would say, a lot of people speculate it was also because she lost, the people that were able to temper her. But I think that, yes, that's true. When push comes to shove, she's shown to be very ruthless. I was about to say worthless. What am I saying? I think Dany, does this ruin her as a character to me? No. I put her in the category of like Magneto and Chara's Noble from Mobile Suit Gundam. These are characters that are noble, that actually want to do good, but just go too far to accomplish their goals. They think that the needs of the future outweigh the present. And, like Magneto, how many times has he planned to reverse the poles using Earth's magnetic polarity? How many times has he told the mutants to rise up and kill the humans? A lot. But at the same time, he's also teamed up with the X-Men. A lot. He was actually headmaster of Xavier's school at one point. He too, like Dany, had a traumatizing childhood. So, you can sympathize with him. He just takes things too far. Char from Gundam. Little background on Gundam. Basically, in Gundam, the world's overpopulated, so they built colonies around the Earth, and the people of the colonies rebelled and wanted self-rule. Charles Noble's father led that, but a rival family had him assassinated and decided to start the war with Earth. Char started fighting for them, and long story, but eventually it gets to the point where Char is ready to drop an asteroid on Earth. He's also charismatic, and him wanting freedom for the colonies is a noble cause, but once again, took it too far. So I think actually in the end, Dany is a lot like that. We'll see in the final episode. We're not done yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But if the point of this rant right now is that this did not come out of thin air. And while maybe the biggest flaw of this season, which I'm going to get to later, is the pacing of the show, and a lot of people felt that this turn wasn't earned with enough over the past 2 seasons, the clues were there. And I think the clues were there even in these past 2 seasons, though not as apparent. And I also think it's because a lot of the people who Dany was burning were people you felt deserved it. People you wanted to see get burned. But, again, she's a Targaryen, and the Targaryens are conquerors. Her ancestor Aegon heated up Harrenhal to the point where people were burned alive because it just kept heating the stones until people flared up or couldn't stand the heat and were broiled. So that's who they are. Anyway, so that's what it was. So that's why I think that Danny's heel turn was appropriate. Moving forward, let's talk about the other parts of the show I liked. I really enjoyed the Clegane Bowl. It ended how it was supposed to go. And it was a fight to the finish. And, I like that the Hound resigned himself to his fate, and that in the end, his greatest fear did him in, but at the same time, it took out his brother, which is where it all began, in fire. So, I also like the fact that Arya and the Hound reconciled. Hound's been on her list, because after what he did to Micah, the butcher's boy, after her little fight with Joffrey. The Hound, if you don't remember, the Hound hunted him down and murdered him after Joffrey told the lie that he and Arya jumped and beat him up. Since that day, the Hound has been... Arya's hated him. She even left him to die at one point when they were traveling together. However, now, the Hound told her, if you keep going for revenge, you're gonna die. You're gonna wind up like me. This will be the end of your story if you keep searching for Cersei. And she accepted his advice and even called him by his real name, Clegane. And I think that was a major monument, because it shows that even in this world of Game of Thrones, between enemies who have done horrible things to each other and to other people, that there can be forgiveness, even in Westeros. And I thought that was a great moment. Plus, just the way that the mountain looked, that... Oh, how do you describe him? He looked like a giant version of the and veiny version of the Emperor, crossed with like Andre the Giant. It was frightening and at the same time cool. Next, we're going to go to Arya. Once again, we'll talk about I just talked about her revenge arc and how she finally decided that, getting Cersei in the end, just isn't worth it. That she'd die in King's Landing with this dragon attack, before she, she might not even get there. And, that was a great decision. It also allowed us to go and give us a first-person, almost, point of view of the attack. She's on the ground during the attack, and most of the time we're following Arya as we're just watching destruction rain down and people fleeing for their lives, and Arya trying to help this family and some people trying to help her, then watching them die, watching them turn into the heat into like ash sculptures like in Pompeii after Vesuvius. Even Arya, who killed the Night King, the great evil of Westeros, she was overwhelmed, and we were nervous for her. And just watching her feel so helpless shows how powerful the dragons are. So I thought it was a great move, to have her be the single point of view person for the dragon attack. In terms of the civilian panic, and show just how overwhelmed even she is, and how afraid even she was, and how shell-shocked she was. Arya, afraid of nothing, fearless. She's been that way since the beginning. Even she is in shock. As for the White Horse, we'll find out next week. Some say it was Bran sending something to help her. Alright. Works for me. Alright. The Lannisters. Scene between Jaime and Tyrion was heartbreaking ever since the beginning of the show when Jaime bought Tyrion some women. We knew there was a connection between the two and that the two enjoyed each other's company. We've always known that Jaime cares about Tyrion. He freed him. And Tyrion cares about Jaime. And I thought their final conversation was very telling because Jaime was always nice to Tyrion when they were growing up. And Tyrion remembered that. He was just like, you were the only one who was ever kind to me. You never treated me like a monster. You never treated me like I was a dwarf or a black sheep. And he freed him. And now it was Tyrion's turn to help him. And it shows that in the end, Tyrion does care about his family, no matter what their situation is. He wants Jaime to get Cersei out of there, no matter how evil and rotten she was to him, because he wants their child to survive. And he wants to see if there's a chance that there's a Lannister child that can be raised right. Jaime, well, a lot of people didn't like the fact that he left Brienne, but in the end, he always was about Cersei. Been that way since he was a child, and now she's carrying another one of his. She bore his children, and now she's carrying another one. And Jaime not only realizes that she is the person that he loves the most, but also the mother of his children, and he wants to save her. He wants to get her out of there, and then see if they can maybe find a life, and maybe see if there is good in her, because he's probably seen sides of her that were, that we haven't seen. And, he's probably seen her good side. He's seen her mothering side firsthand. He's known her all his life. They were twins. So I think he wanted that to maybe get her away from the world of power, the world of ruling and wealth, and just see what she would be like as a mother. So I think that's why Jaime, he wanted to redeem her in the end, if I could sum it up. As for Cersei, boy. Once again, going back, this show has always been about what Cersei wants, Cersei gets. She wanted her sons on the Iron Throne. They got there. She wanted to get rid of her brother. She sort of, but she got rid of him. She wanted Robert out of the way. Boom. Happened. Nothing stopped her. And in the end, she became queen, because she wanted to be queen. Anyway, she had always won. And she even was able to get an army that took out one of the dragons. So she's thinking, I've got it made. She has that smug look on her face when she's just like, all right, I'm going to go kill your friend right in front of you, Dragon Queen. Oh yeah, and your dragon is behind. He's not within range, because we got these scorpion bolts ready to get you. And then she has Missandei beheaded, and she still had that smug look. She had that smug look in the tower that she had when the Faith Militant was, and the Sept was blown up with the Tyrells. And I loved watching her crumble like the Red Keep. When she watched that dragon just taking out the Iron Fleet, taking out the crossbolts, taking out everything in sight, and just burning King's Landing, she thought the Red Keep would hold. It wasn't holding. Just watching her, all her best laid plans just go up in fire was very satisfying. Then the show did something very cool that, I didn't realize. They made me feel pity for her at the end. As she was underground with her brother, watching as the castle just was falling down and they were walled in by the bricks, all she was like was that, I want my child to live. She was a mother wanting to protect her child. And really, a lot of what she did was to protect her children. Same thing with Jamie. I mean, he pushed Bran out of the window because if Robert found out that her child was this, that Joffrey and Tommen and Myrcella were the children of Jamie, he'd have the kids killed, her killed, and Jamie killed. So everything she's done really is to protect the children. It's why she had Ned Stark framed. It's why he does a lot of what she does. Yes, there is a part of her that actually a major part of her. She wants power. She lusts over it. And she definitely wanted to have her kid to rule through her children. You saw it with Joffrey, but he got out of control. Saw it through Tommen, but he was easily led astray. But in the end, it all came down to her and her children. And the fact that the directors and writers made you actually feel pity for her in those final moments as the castle crumbled, kind of like the way Krypton Jor-El's laboratory crumbled in Superman, you felt some pity. I will say that was a good touch. Alright, pacing and flaws. Let's get to this. Yes, there were a lot. And pacing is an issue right now with this season. But I liken it to a quote that George R.R. Martin, author of the books, even said. When he was working on, I think it was The Twilight Zone or a show similar to it, he said that the producer told him, he wrote a scene where it was supposed to be a final battle between Merlin and Sir Lancelot at Stonehenge, and they were going to have two armies coming at each other, and they told him, George, you can have horses, or you can have Stonehenge, but you can't have them both. I feel like that's the way it's happening with Game of Thrones this season. HBO told them, or the producers just said, all right, we can have long, paced out character moments leading to the big moments everybody wants to see, or we can give the people what they want, which is the big moments they've been building towards, and give that the amount of space that everybody wants, but we can't do them both. And they decided to go with the big moments, which is understandable because it's a television show, and that, television is more plot-centric, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But yeah, a lot of these episodes have felt like 2 episodes crammed into one, especially the week before's. The first half was perfectly fine aftermath with seeds of dissension being sown, and then the second half was when was the struggle against the Iron Fleet when they killed Rhaegal. I believe, yeah, Rhaegal was one. I'm messing up the dragon name. I apologize. All right. But getting back to what we were saying about being plot heavy, being plot driven, and character driven, I think that ultimately George R.R. Martin is a writer that's been called and I just heard this term, pantser. That doesn't mean he likes to pull down people's pants. It means that he flies by the seat of his pants when he writes and lets the characters dictate things. It explains a lot as to why his books are always so late, because he takes things logical step by step to try to get to where he wants to go, but it has to be driven by the character, and oftentimes the character sometimes goes in a different direction, and you'd have to do something artificial to get the character in the direction to where you want to go. In television, you really don't have that luxury. And while Martin has even said he has the broad strokes, he has places, he has big events that need to happen, it's taken forever to get there. Books 4 and 5 take forever. They're going nowhere. I mean, 1,000 pages, and you're building towards Tyrion meeting Dany, and it doesn't even happen in that book. Come on. You can't do that on television. Plus, audiences don't have the patience for that with television, I think. Some do. I won't say that it's not true. But, they had to, for whatever reason, they had to cut it down and get to the big moments. So they decided that, maybe suddenly it doesn't take weeks to get from Dragonstone to King's Landing. It could take a matter of hours or something, or whatever, however long it took. Yeah, no. They went into what they did in Lord of the Rings. Distance no longer mattered, and the development that happened with the distance got cut because now they're going to plot orientation, where you got to get the characters in peace and into their place to resolve the plot. That being said, which brings me to this episode. I think this episode was what the whole season was steered around. This episode, everything that needed to happen was to get to here. This episode was, I think, written first, and then all the writers had to be like, all right, we got to get everybody in position so we could get everyone to King's Landing for Dany to just burn it. That's what I think how this season was structured. I'm not in the writer's room, so I couldn't tell you whether or not that's true, but I feel like that's the way it is, and I feel like this is also where George R. R. Martin is actually going with the books. Anyway, other things. So when did Dany learn to steer? Last week when Euron Greyjoy shot one of the dragons, and they just kept firing the scorpion bolts at them. She couldn't go around them to burn them from behind. Now all of a sudden she can? I don't know. I read somewhere online that actually her strategy now was she went up so high into the sun that nobody could see, and then just almost like free fall down as death from above. I'll have to rewatch to see that. But that makes sense, kind of. I like to say it was because she was mentally shaken by Rhaegal's death. She did not think that a regular person could kill a dragon. Because the only one that killed a dragon was the Night King, and he was magic. She didn't think ordinary people could kill magic. Why should she? She walked through fire to birth these dragons. So I think that was I guess my big issue and a lot of people's issue. Suddenly, these things that were able to take out a dragon last week suddenly were rendered useless this week. I don't know why. I don't It was what it was. I think they just thought we were just going to forgive it because we wanted to see those moments. That's the only explanation. Anyway, another thing that bothered me was, Jaime, you have a golden hand. A hand made out of solid gold. And you're in a fight with Euron Greyjoy. Use that hand, man! Why didn't you just backhand him with it, and then just go boom, 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 just bludgeon him to like Negan bludgeoned Glenn, and just get blood all in brain and bone all over it? That's what you should have done. Whack him with that thing. Why not? Anyway, alright, moving on. Jon Snow still not too quick on the uptake. He just stood there for a while, dumbfounded, with that look on his face, like when the Unsullied started and the Dothraki just started massacring people. Meanwhile, watching as Dany came along and started burning the city, just stood there for a few minutes before realizing, maybe there's a problem. Once again, Jon's not quick on the uptake, but who knows? Maybe he'll learn next week. I don't know. Anyway, and this one is just a minor quibble. They said they were going to attack at daybreak. During daybreak, the sun was up. When I hear daybreak, I think when the sun rises. Well, when they arrived on King's Landing, Jon Snow and his forces, the sun was already up. Minor thing. That's just me being nitpicky. Whatever. Overall, I thought this was actually a very strong episode. I've watched it a couple of times. It was exciting. I loved the direction. I loved the music. I loved the performances were great, and I liked the moments. These were moments I had been waiting for. What is it? Plot driven as opposed to character driven? Yes. Is Game of Thrones now basically got its more about getting the characters in the positions that they need to be for the story to end? Yes. That's what it is, but I feel like that's the way it is with all stories. Eventually, the characters need to be where they are for it to end. Sometimes things take a different route. Happens. But a lot of the times, at least, in comics, when you have an endpoint in mind, eventually you got to reach that endpoint. And that's what it is with Game of Thrones. Also, this is a show that's a lot of passionate fans, and they all had their dreams of the ending, and they're not all getting the ending they want. A lot of people want Jon and Dany on the Iron Throne, and realize that that's not going to happen. Or maybe it will, I don't know, but as of right now, doesn't look like it. But it was not an out-of-nowhere heel turn, as they say in wrestling. It was building. You just have to go back, and when you think about it, you realize, like all great heel turns, oh, that was common for a while. All right. That's it for me. That's it for this debut edition of Todd Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Remember to click on the links in the description to order your copies of Robots vs. Princesses, all ages comic, partially inspired by Game of Thrones. Imagine if Arya was at a school for Disney princesses, and you'll get the idea. Plus, there's giant robots. So, until then it's been fun. Till next time, this is Todd Matthy, signing out.